So how should preppers deal with non-preppers? Hey, I'm Todd Sepulveda with Ready Your Future and the Christian Prepper Podcast, and this is another Bible devotional with a preparedness application. We've been looking at the life of Jacob, and listen, we are at the very end. We probably have one more devotional where we'll talk a little bit about the life of Jacob, and then we'll end it. And I've got some good things moving forward for us. But I want to go ahead and look at this one here. This is Jacob, and he finds out that his son Joseph is really alive, and he winds up coming down to Israel. So we're going to go ahead and pick it up there. We're going to look at Genesis chapter 45. We're going to read a small little portion there, and then we're going to jump to Genesis chapter 46, and we're going to jump a lot of other verses that just really don't apply, and we'll just kind of do it there. So let's go ahead and go there. I'm going to go and read out of the Holman Christian Standard Bible. It is an optimal, they call this an optimal version. So you have the word for word versions of the Bible, like the New American Standard. You have the dynamic version, which is a thought for thought, like the NIV. And they say that the Holman Christian Standard Bible is an optimal. It's like blends the both of them together. So anyway, you tell me what you think. So let's go ahead and start reading again, Genesis chapter 45, starting with verse 16. When the news reached Pharaoh's palace, Joseph's brothers have come. Pharaoh and his servants were pleased. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers, do this, load your animals and go on back to the land of Canaan. Get your father and your families and come back to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you can eat from the richness of the land. You are also commanded, do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your young children and your wives, and bring your father here. Do not be concerned about your belongings, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours." The thing about Pharaoh is like he appreciates Joseph. Joseph saved all of Egypt. And so he's saying like, listen, go get your dad, go get your brothers, go get your family, bring them all. I'm going to give you the very best of the best. Don't even worry about your belongings. You're going to get the very best of Egypt. Verse 21, the sons of Israel did this. Joseph gave them wagons as Pharaoh had commanded, and he gave them provisions for the journey. He gave each of the brothers changes of clothes, but he gave Benjamin 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of clothes. He sent his father the following: 10 donkeys carrying the best products of Egypt, 10 female donkeys carrying grain, food, and provisions for his father on the journey. So Joseph sent his brother on the way, and they were leaving. He said to them, "Don't argue on the way." Joseph knows, he's like, hey, listen, y'all had to deal with a whole lot of issues right here. There's been a whole lot of change, and you've just been kind of inundated with this. But when you get out there, don't start arguing. Joseph, although it's been many years, he knew how they were. The other thing that I think is kind of weird is like he sends all these, the donkeys and the changes of clothes and all these different things for his dad, right, for the family, but they're just going to turn around and come right back. So it's kind of like, why are you sending all that? Partly too is just to show the blessings and like, hey, there's a lot more where this comes from. Or continuing on, verse 25. So they went up from Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. They said, "Joseph is still alive, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt." Jacob was stunned, for he did not believe them. But when they told Jacob all that Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to transport him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. Then Israel said, "Enough, my son Joseph is still alive. I will go see him before I die." So we're going to jump to chapter 46, verse 28. Jacob had sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to prepare for his arrival at Goshen. When they came to the land of Goshen, Joseph hitched the horses to his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel. Joseph presented himself to him, threw his arms around him, and wept for a long time. Like, can you imagine thinking that your kid has been dead all these years and then all of a sudden finding out that he was alive, and how much joy and joy that would have caused? I mean, but it also would have caused a lot of other questions, and it just would have been really weird. Verse 30, then Israel said to Joseph, "At last I can die, now that I have seen your face and know you are still alive." Joseph said to his brothers, and this is what I really want to hone in on here, right here. So just hone in on this. Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I will go up and inform Pharaoh, telling him, my brothers and my father's household, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me. The men are shepherds. They also raise livestock. They have brought their sheep and cattle and all that they have. When Pharaoh addresses you and asks, 'What is your occupation?' you are to say, your servants, both we and our fathers, have raised livestock from our youth until now. Then you will be allowed to settle in the land of Goshen, since all shepherds are abhorrent to Egyptians. All right. That's where I wanted to kind of hone in on and kind of give that to you. But I really wanted to look at, this whole story and kind of lead up to this. I think it's really interesting that Joseph wound up saying this about his family. He's like, hey, listen, when Pharaoh comes, you tell him, you guys are shepherds. You've been dealing with livestock all your life so that you can stay in the land of Goshen. Joseph was thinking way ahead of the game. And part of it, we see this at the very last line in verse 34, is that shepherds are abhorrent to Egyptians. What Joseph was doing was keeping a separation between Jacob and his brothers and their families and all the other Egyptians. Pharaoh had already said, hey, I'm going to give you the best of the land. You're going to be able to have the very best of the best. Don't worry about your belongings. Just kind of come on. But he's like, no. Joseph was like, no, I need to make sure that there is a separation between you and the rest of the Egyptians. So what's the biblical application here? The Bible application is that Joseph was showing us a model of being in the world, but not of the world. When you read the book of Genesis, and when you think about the story of the Israelites and Egypt coming out of Egypt, Egypt is always a metaphor for the world. What Joseph was doing is he was setting up his family for success by allowing them to be in the world, but not of the world. He was like, I'm not going to let you to come into Egypt and be assimilated into Egypt. There's a lot more Egyptians than there are of you. You would wind up becoming assimilated. Your kids would marry other Egyptians by the time you know it, because of my popularity and everything, and because you would be blessed and you would be living the high life. You wouldn't even be able to recognize your own culture. You would have adopted all the Egyptian culture. And maybe he was learning that from his own experience, from the fact that he was given an Egyptian wife, right? And so he had kids, and he was probably living, he was the second in command of Egypt. So he probably had a lot of blessings, and there was a lot of Egypt inside of him. But he was wise enough to know that he needed to make sure that there was a separation between the Hebrew people and the Egyptians. So being that they're in Goshen, they get to build, basically they have their own culture there. They wind up having, their families there, they marry there. And by the time we get to Moses, 400 years later, there are so many Hebrews that the Egyptians start to be concerned, right? It's like, hey, you guys live in Egypt, but y'all are a whole nation unto yourselves. And so they subjected them into labor, into slaves, into hardship. Now, this was prophetic because God had already told Abraham in Genesis chapter 15 that his descendants were going to go and they were going to be oppressed for 400 years. God didn't give him a whole lot of information on details about that, but this was prophetic. But the fact that this happened this way allowed the Hebrew people to continue being the Hebrew people with their traditions, with their cultures, and not being assimilated into everybody else. It's a model for even believers. When we start looking at, for instance, the book of Revelation, and so looking at Revelation chapter 18, verse 4 and 5, this is the fall of Babylon the Great. It says this, then I heard another voice from heaven, come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins or receive any of her plagues, for her sins are piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes. In the book of Revelation, God's people are supposed to be separated out from all the other rest of everybody else, because there needed to be a difference. There needed to be a separation, like come away and don't sin. We see also in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 13 to 15, Paul writes, "Do not be mismatched with unbelievers. For what partnership is there between righteousness and lawlessness? Or what fellowship does light have with darkness? What agreement does Christ have with Belial? Or what does a believer have in common with an unbeliever?" See, this is a pattern and a model for the church, for believers, and even for preppers, which I'll get into in just a minute, of being separated, being in the world, but not being of the world, being separated from the effects and the things that happen here. And so as believers, we are supposed to be, we have our own culture, we have our own way of doing things, right? But we live in the world, and I want you to really think about this. How many believers do you know that live more like the world that really live like believers? We go to church once a week for most people, and that's if they go to church, and they experience, church for 1 hour, and then all the other hours of the week are done in the world. Is there any true separation there? Can that truly be a separation of who we're supposed to be? Where God is telling us, don't be unequally yoked. And that's supposed to be about marriage, but it can be also in business, and it can be in relationships that we have. In Revelations 18, we see, hey, come out from her, my people. Don't be a part of that sin. Don't be a part of it. Now, we can't completely isolate ourselves as believers away from other people, because if we did, well, then they would never hear the gospel. We need to be able to share the gospel with other people. We need to be able to talk about Jesus. We need to be able to help other people who are in need. But we don't need to be hanging out with them so much that their lives, that their situations, that the way that they live impact and influence the way that we're going to be living for Jesus. So what's the preparedness application? It's very similar to the application for believers. The only difference is that as preppers, we are very careful. Sometimes I think we go to the extreme. We are very careful about not sharing with other people that we are preppers or we believe in preparedness, and we don't share with them how to help themselves, how to be prepared. And so one of the things that we really truly need to do as preppers and as believers who are preppers is be able to share how you get prepared without giving away the fact that we might have food storage, and we might have water, and we might have, the different things that make us who we are as people who believe in self-reliance and being prepared. So some of those things that we can do, and I've talked about this extensively on my other podcast on Ready Your Future, and I've talked about it on the website as well, but we can talk about situations and emergencies without really saying that we're preppers. So again, down here in the South, on the Gulf Coast, I'm in Houston, I talk a lot about hurricane preparedness. And we entered hurricane season on June 1st, 2025 is when I'm recording this in 2025. June 1st, 2025 was the start of hurricane season. And so around here, if I am talking at work, or if I'm talking at the store, if I'm talking with a neighbor, if I bring up hurricanes and being prepared for a hurricane, that is a no-brainer for everybody here. Everybody understands that. Nobody is going to say, if I'm talking about, man, yeah, hurricane season starting up and it might be a doozy and you might want to be prepared for it, No one is going to say, oh my gosh, he's a prepper and oh my, he's got food storage and he's one of those wacky doomsday. No one is going to say that, because everybody understands hurricanes down here. They understand what it takes, right? They understand the damage that it does. So sitting around the table when I'm eating lunch with other colleagues at work, I might say something like, yeah, the names of the storms have come out for hurricane season. Do you have a generator? Have you checked your generator? Like, I know people, because of last hurricane season, and we had the derecho as well. A lot of people got hurricanes. We had the derecho, and then the hurricane hit like almost a month apart. People who lost all their freezer in the derecho, and then later on they lost their freezer again in the hurricane barrel. And so by that time, I was talking to people all the time. I was like a prepper evangelist. I was like, hey, you probably lost more money than it would have been to buy a generator and be able to keep all your stuff frozen. And a lot of people are like, Todd, you're right. A lot of people bought generators at that time and they've used them, but they have probably, because they're not thinking about it, they haven't done maintenance on it, they haven't changed the oil, they haven't started it up since that time. So it'd be really easy for me right now to be able to say, hey, have you tested your generator? Have you started it up and let it run for 15 minutes? Have you changed the oil out? Did you make sure that you ran all the gas out? Does it need to go and get a tune-up before you truly need it for hurricanes? No one would argue with me on that. Everyone would understand, like, you know what, Todd, you're right. I haven't done that this weekend. I'm going to go ahead and do that so we're ready in case something happens. So that is normal. Or I can talk about, hurricane season's coming up, and man, it might be smart to replace some of your batteries. It might be smart to have some food at home and some water just in case. No one would argue with me because they know that when hurricane season happens and we have a hurricane in the Gulf and it's coming towards Houston, that everybody waits the very last minute, right? They wait to the very last minute and then they go to the grocery store and they're fighting all the lines and they don't get what they want. And so, although people hear about this and they know about it, they know about being prepared, they don't get prepared. So I can be of value to people, a big value to people, if I remind them, hey, make sure you get your generator looked at. Make sure your generator's ready. Make sure you have fuel. Make sure you have propane. Make sure you have a little bit of supplies ready to go, so you're not fighting the crowds and everybody. That would make sense to it. And you have situations in your area where that would make sense. Or even if you don't, you could always bring up, man, did you hear about the fires over here or the floods over here? I wonder how you can be better prepared to mitigate that kind of situation. And you might know already what you would do, but you're bringing that up to start a discussion. And that's how you can be a person that talks about preparedness, helps other people get better prepared without letting them know that you have food at home and stockpiles of water and all the other things that we do, right? And so you're being a prepper, right? You're in the world, but you're not of the world. You're letting them know that you understand what being prepared means, but you're not of the whole preparedness world and the whole culture of being a prepper, because that turns people off, and a lot of people don't want to hear that. And so that's one of those things that you can wind up doing, is being a person that talks about preparedness in that way. And so I think it has this strong correlation with what Joseph did. What we're supposed to be doing as believers is sharing the word out there about being preppers, but not necessarily going all in and becoming their very best friend to where they know everything you have in your house. I hope that makes a whole lot of sense. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end it there. Like I said, we have one more devotional with Jacob, and then we got some really good things coming up. Listen, if you like preparedness and you want more preparedness, you can always come over to Ready Your Future. You can always come over to and listen to the podcast. We're on all the different podcast networks. You can also come over to the website. You can listen to the podcast there. You can listen to the Christian Prepper podcast there, but you can also read the articles. But if you would like to get one actionable tip in your inbox every single week, I'd love for you to come and sign up for the Tribe. It is my newsletter where I just send out one actionable tip every single week. It comes to you Wednesday morning. The sign up link is going to be in the description, and you can go ahead and do that. Guys, let me go ahead and close out with a prayer, and we'll end it there. Father, I just thank you so much for my friends who watch the videos, who listen to the podcast. Lord, and I pray that you would help them, not only in their faith and their walk, to be able to live the walk that is in the world but not of the world, but also this preparedness, Lord, that they would share preparedness with their loved ones, that they would share preparedness with their coworkers, with their neighbors, so other people are better prepared for all the emergencies that are out there. So I pray that you would give them a real revelation of this message, and that you would help them, Lord God, to be the people that you would want them to be. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, Well, guys, hopefully that was a blessing for you. We're going to go ahead and end it there. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on this one. We'll catch you on the next one. God bless you. Peace.